You're from Clinton?
Or from Clinton.
I didn't hear that last bit.
Mike is coming.
Mike is here,
Oh, that's right. He's up there.
and we came from Clinton.
Also Michael, whatever. Dave Lessons here in Austin Town.
You sounded good from the other room. I can say that.
Thank you.
What brought you guys here? The Facebook?
I think Mike saw maybe like a poster at the library, and then I went on meetup.com and found a group.
Do you guys have a pre-existing interest in philosophy in general, or?
Yeah, we both studied philosophy.
Oh, cool.
Really? Where at?
I studied at a small liberal arts school in Michigan. It's tiny.
Winona, Minnesota. That's where I'm from. St. Mary's College.
So okay? So you're both from Clinton. This is good.
You for now.
I mean,
Yeah.
you live in Clinton, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And I know you had a class, right?
I had a class at CCC, the Intro to Philosophy.
Who taught that?
Curtis Gerard.
Lance over there on the IT.
Yeah. Lance is running our tech.
They're techie.
Tonight's topic was going to be ethics. So the first hour, basically, we can talk about ethics, and then the second hour, we can delve more specifically into rights. I don't know if it's going to take any of that, but I figured these topics were controversial enough and hot button enough so that we'd probably get a lot of discussion right off the bat. That all prepared material. I did want to say a couple of things about ethics that I saw a lot of people at the University of Iowa would come in. A lot of the freshmen, very common that people would come in as relativists.
This is Alex.
Alex made it. Woo! Where's your other half?
She's up there.
She's coming. Yeah. So one of the problems, this is totally my own bias, but the problems you get from people going through the university, the like primary, secondary education, they all somehow end up being relativists, and I probably credit that to cultural anthropology influence. Some kind of just the simple fact that there are different moral systems in the world, and by saying that, then that means that there's no way to know which morality is correct. And so that would be relativism. Basically, it means that whatever is the local convention is what you should go with. It's basically the conclusion on that. But then the problem with that is then you end up with issues like female genital. This is, if you believe in cultural relativism, then you can't say anything against it. Right. So.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm a little late. Can I join?
Come on in.
Of course.
Yeah.
Introduce yourself.
Mark Beargrass.
Hi, Mark.
How's it going? I don't normally do that well unless I drink, so I bought a few beers.
That's okay.
Somebody sitting here already?
No, that's just, I can do that.
We'll have to scoot in and make room for.
Yeah, we're kind of informal here, so just
Good.
make yourself at home.
So Steve takes the stance that he doesn't believe in relativism so much because he thinks that morals are something that are intrinsic, correct? In a way, in a sense.
Yeah, I guess I believe in objective morality. I believe there is a right answer. Whether we know what that is, it's another question. But I do believe that such a thing exists. From a cultural evolution point of view, it's like, but somehow collectively, as we discuss these things, we learn and we grow, and we find out more about what is the right way to live and how to treat each other, those kind of things. And that kind of brings me to the distinction between like ethics and morals. And most philosophers don't really make that much of a distinction between the two. Scoot over and make another chair.
You could switch it.
Sure.
So the difference between morals and ethics.
And this is, again, this is just kind of like what I've come to through years of struggling with words and stuff. So basically, the way I look at it is that morals is like a prescription, kind of like a lifestyle sort of thing, whereas ethics is more specifically. So, but that's just my convention. I mean, if you look at the dictionary, there's not really a whole lot of distinction difference. But I see ethics as a subset of morals. So, like, if you want to live a good life and to be a moral person, then part of that is to treat other people well, and that's where the discussion of ethics comes into play. And
Yeah, what's treating people well, and what point do you not care?
right, and that's the question of like, why be moral? Why be ethical? I mean, what's your motivation? What motivation to even care in the first place? That's like, I mean,
Well, I'd like to back up just a little, and
Sure.
I'm not studied like you guys, well studied, but at 16, 17, I was raised by bikers in a gang called the Brothers, and they had morals, they had ethics. Their ethics were, if you were a brother, if you were a biker, we didn't mess with you. We took care of you. If you weren't, if you were a weekend biker, we would take your motorcycle. We would beat you up. You know, that was ethics, I guess. Morals, they took care of me. As much bad stuff that was going on in that place for 3 years, they took care of me, and they kept me healthy and happy.
that's really the question of like, who's worthy of moral consideration?
Yes.
You know, like, do animals have rights? I mean, those kind of questions. And I mean, who do we even care about? Who's because like in a wartime situation, it's very common for us to dehumanize the adversary. So we just, you know, we them down.
And then, according to that ethic, everyone outside of that is excluded from those morals and ethics. And so that begs the question of, how and should we try to be having a system in place where, those ethics and morals more widely apply to, humans, and even at that level, human, ethics, do we draw the line there so that we're not, do we really differentiate ourselves from nature so much that nature itself also doesn't have its own set of intrinsic morals and ethics?
And I was noticing that you said you didn't really believe in relativism. However, this kind of discussion that we've been having, kind of, to me, that's what it represents.
Really?
Well, yeah, because with the bikers, it's relativism to them. It's because he was involved in that. It was relativism. And then, I mean, obviously, to a certain degree, it doesn't exist. But if you argue about the morals and ethics between different groups of people or different societies or cultures, it really, it's there. It's at least an underlying thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the difference between science and philosophy, really, is that science tries to describe the world as it is. But when philosophers discuss morality and ethics, they're talking about the world as it should be.
Right.
And so, right. So if you talk about a cultural anthropologist, the fact that, I mean, it's just the simple fact that all these different cultures exist and subcultures, they all have systems, but does the fact that they exist mean that there's no way to know about the right way to live? Or is it just, okay, they have a set of moral principles by which they live their lives. Are they right? That's a separate question. They have those things.
In their minds they are.
Well, yeah, I mean,
When I got out of that system, I realized that's not the morals and ethics I wanted to have. And I
right. So
changed.
you think that their system was wrong, even though obviously they had them.
I respected them for
Right.
what they did, and how they took care of their own.
What do you think about the idea that they treat their own differently from how they treat the general populace?
I think it's a family thing. I think there's probably certainly some not correct things in there, but there's also, it's a family as dysfunctional as it is, and they lived by those rules and they took care of their own, and I have to respect that. But I don't think it was the way I wanted to live.
I think that's an issue that I think applies to a broader, to a global scale at every level. Almost, you see that happening, where one group of people will have a certain, set of beliefs and ethics and morals and rights that they prescribe to their peoples. But then everything outside of that is to the exclusion of it. So, at a national level, that is what's happening. People have, pride for their country, which is a great thing. But when it's at the exclusion of everyone else, is it such a great thing? I don't know.
Muslims.
Nope.
I mean, nationalism on that kind of scale, I mean, that it can lead to quite a few different things. I mean, you have, like China, where it's all it, in certain people's morals and certain people's ethics. I mean, on both sides, there's obviously Nazi Germany happens because people are really don't have anything else to go for, so they just let it happen. And but on the other side, the U.S. was interning people of Japanese descent in the desert. I mean, and that was fine because people were okay with it.
Well, what about if you really bring it back to like a level of family? You think you should treat your family differently than you should treat people that live outside of your home?
Personally, no. I think it totally depends on what kind of relationship you have with your family and what kind of relationship they have back with you.
What if you have a significant other? Should you treat that person differently than you treat the general public?
Depends. Really, it's a really
Better.
For
I
me-
mean, some people might say.
so I would say
It's actually on
more
a
than-
case by case basis. Is you prioritize what really needs to come first. Like if your significant other like call off work and just not go, prioritize, okay, and know that I'm going to come home and still spend time with this person and make sure that we still have a place to live at the end of the month. Or do I just say screw it all and go home and stay home?
I agree.
Priorities.
I think what she said about it being on an individual basis, that brings up a really good point too. Is that in developing a system of ethics and then trying to apply it broadly to everyone else. In other words, let's say you treat your family well. Well, you want to apply that ethical code to the whole world. That people should be treated in a certain way. But then you have a society where it's normal for people to be completely disconnected for each other. Intrinsically, we would say that's bad. We say it's wrong that people should be connected, not disconnected from each other. But ethically, do we have a right, just because we have an ethics system in place that works for us, does that give us a right to tell other groups of people how they should ethically behave?
We're still trying to figure out how we should behave, let alone
True.
how we should tell somebody else to do.
for the question of family, I mean, it's not uncommon for a lot of people, or it really depends on what you're considering to be your family.
Yes.
I mean, your
Biological or
biological
otherwise.
family, there are hundreds upon thousands upon millions, honestly, who either just don't know them at all or have never met them or anything like that. And
So their family is the other people that have surrounded them and chosen to take
Yeah.
care of them. And so I think that shows, like, we think of family, in those two senses very distinctly. One is biologically your family, but on the other hand, we also apply the word family to, like here at Awesome Town, we call ourselves family in a sense. So, I mean, what does that mean? Can I link to everyone in the world?
Personally, I would
All
say
the whole
no.
world our family?
I actually believe that exclusivity is a requirement for a sense of community to flourish. If you want to try to have a special party where everybody's invited, then nobody's going to feel special. But if you invite only your closest friends, then they know that they're the ones that matter to you.
Mhm.
So I think exclusivity is a good thing. But I mean, that's debatable.
Some of that exclusivity too, even with like on a bigger scale, like do animals have rights to other people? It hasn't happened yet, but in the infiniteness that is the universe, I have to assume that eventually there will be other sentient species that we'll encounter. Do we then draw a line there as well? I mean, is there a line to be drawn with only humans, and only Earth, or only what we can control, as opposed to
In the large scope of things.
on the large, even larger?
Well, so maybe we have some kind of sliding scale going on here. So maybe we want to treat our friends extra special, extra ethical. And maybe those people on the other side of the war, maybe we don't want to worry about it quite so much. I don't
Yeah.
know, everybody-
Have this like you in the middle, and then there's like family, and then there's like friends, and then
Yeah.
there's like
My biological family was very close. Then there was circles within. 4 sisters would say, "You don't know what it's like," to the brothers. We're not going to let you into this circle. Became codependent, became very unhealthy, and it took a priest that was a family friend to say, "I love your family, but they are very codependent in it. You need to break that circle to grow." And it took us into our late 30s to break the circle and grow. And there's still hard feelings. So the exclusivity really took its toll on our biological family. And I think it's why I reach at Awesome Town for family, is I want to make my own group that's our family. And it ruined part of me being that kind of a person growing up.
it's only us, and everyone else can
Yeah.
kick rocks,
Well, and then there's the question of, if moral objectivity exists, in other words, there is such thing as right and wrong intrinsically, despite our perception and beliefs, do we have a duty to, dissuade people from doing things that are wrong? At what line, where do we draw the line between intervention and non-intervention? If someone's doing something wrong, you would think it would be your human duty to correct that, right?
I would tend to think that if you had some way of knowing that you were infallible with your logic or whatever, then you would want to try to persuade people to follow your, I don't know, your laws or whatever. But I don't know. That's the problem with me, is I don't know what that objective truth is. I believe in objective morality. I believe in objective moral facts, but I can't say that I have it all ironed out.
Which is why we're here.
Right.
Right.
But that's the thing
That line
too.
you're talking about is it harming other people? That's where I like to draw that line.
Yeah.
So if they're searching for their own and it's not hurting anybody else, let them do that.
Is it excluding?
What
Is
point
there a word
you-
for that?
taking someone else's to feed your own? There's where.
Well, and maybe there's some gray territory there too.
Normally there is.
Causing harm to others. Okay, some people cause harms, right?
I lean towards yes. You could convince me otherwise, but
So it's just the line between, as long as it's outside of the boundary of your skin, do not harm, but you can harm yourself. Because what if that
is there
actually-
morals or ethics if there's only one person? If you're the only person. there any morals or ethics?
It's definitely morals. I don't know about the ethics though.
Well, if you harm yourself, you may not have the capability of understanding how that would affect other people too. So
That's
by
true.
harming yourself, you
Good
could
call.
technically be harming other people too.
Absolutely.
So I guess, I mean, we could just make the point all night about how there's so many gray territories, but I don't know. I think it's important that we try to find those distinctions and, in a meeting like this, I think that finding common ground is probably more important than finding specifically where we don't agree. But I think the whole point of this, right, is to show how we can disagree, but still be able to have, an amicable discussion about it without it
Yeah.
going into other territories.
Yes.
That's my personal investment is helping people to articulate their positions without taking personal offense when somebody has a different point of view. Or if you want to reason it out, discuss it or whatever, without taking it personally. It's, oh, they said something bad.
It's very nice to do it face to face.
Yeah.
It's much, much different on the online world. You can't. People just act different.
That you can get with, even if they have like picture your face and they know your name and stuff. At the same time, they're not looking you in the eye.
Right.
You can type whatever you want
Even
and then
on my
just
own,
sign off.
myself, I'll tone it down a bit because I'm looking here right with you. I get much more strongly opinionated when they're not right here.
That's right. I mean, it's a
It's interesting.
Well, that's a good thing. I think that's part of our social evolution is that, face to face, your social instincts kick in. And so not everybody, but I think to a large degree as a society, we tend to do that, dial it back a bit. Don't express yourself in the extreme. Maybe part of that is fear that other people won't understand. Maybe part of it is just, like I said, the social evolution where we have to somehow find a way to communicate. So we do that
Demonstration of
naturally.
ethics or something.
Yes.
Well, it's generally the things that's one where it seems like ethics is the area where people get most bent out of shape,
Right.
when we have our cultural disputes or whatever.
Do you think it's geographical? I mean, we've got two people from two different states here. Does this resonate with you the same way it does with us? I
I'm sorry, where are you guys from?
We're currently living in Clinton, but I'm from Ohio originally. I went to school in Michigan. He's from Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Talking about Midwest folks here.
Yeah, geographical.
Exactly. I think maybe for us, the question isn't so much about geographics. I think that is definitely something to take into consideration when you're talking about ethics and morality, because there are cultural differences. So how do you sort of discuss those? But I think sort of a bigger question is just to really overly simplify it, are we talking about modern ethics? Because modern ethics would say that, I'm a desiring self and you're a desiring self, and ethics is pretty much how we keep each other from killing each other or from manipulating each other or from using each other in a way that we can still sort of live our lives. It creates this sort of protection.
coexist without having to destroy one another.
Right. But if you're talking postmodern ethics, then post World War II, then it's flipped where the other, this idea of other, is put over any sort of autonomous self. So there's always this pre-existing obligation to the other. So when I think about ethics, it's really where are we starting from? Where is that conversation rooted in?
Well, what do you think? I mean, which do you?
I lean more towards postmodern ethics, in that there is always that obligation to the other, and then there's also this realization that you're always going to fall short. But Derrida is a postmodern philosopher, and he talks about the need for deconstruction. So even though you create institutions that are going to fall short, there's this realization that you're still going to go back and deconstruct those institutions to try to do better the next time, but you're still not going to hit it. So then you're going to have to go back and you're going to have to pull apart the pieces and then put it back together and try again. And then it's still not going to work. It goes all out of this call to do justice, to love the other. So Sorry, that was a lot of thoughts.
Social morals and, oh, sorry, go on.
That's right. And I just had a thought about that because
Sure.
I personally don't really feel that there is such thing as true altruism. It just, I don't think that it's possible because like you're saying with postmodern ethics, I think that the desire to put somebody else before yourself is still sort of like part of your own desire, your own own. And like, I think that altruism just can't exist. It doesn't happen because yeah, you are putting somebody else over yourself, but that's still something that you're doing for yourself.
Yeah,
If that
you're
makes
not
sense.
really doing it for them.
Right.
You want to be doing it for them, but in wanting
Right.
that, you're doing it for you.
Right. And it's just like this weird
Mhm.
thing. But yeah, I mean, it's always good to extend the ethics and the morals to other people, obviously. That's why we're here. And that's why the human race has kind of done its thing for however long. But I mean, just to me, I don't know. I believe in altruism at all.
Explain to me altruism.
Basically, you're trying to do good for everybody, you're putting
Complete
everybody else.
selflessness.
Yeah. But I just think that idea of altruism is basically you're trying to achieve that for yourself anyways.
I struggle with that.
Even if you, like, say you help at a homeless shelter or something, even if you only do it just to feel good about yourself, then you're still doing it in
Yeah.
part, even if it's just a small part, for a selfish reason, which completely cancels out the basis of altruism.
Yes.
In a sense, but like she said, it's an ideal that we're building towards. It's never in its perfect form. Maybe altruism is just an example of an ideal that's never completely attainable, but something that we should never shy away from and should always strive for, even
Strive
if
for
it is technically a fallacy.
Deconstruct and strive for again.
No, I don't disagree with that at all. I just wanted to discuss how I feel about the altruism. Like it just doesn't seem like it's rational.
It seemed like there's always a selfishness to even trying to be unselfish.
Right, and I mean it's not even, it's like just so much. It's hard to explain really, but yeah, sort of. Yeah, I mean you can volunteer and you want to help the homeless people, right? But that's still something that comes from the self and the desire to,
So you think Mother Teresa was a very selfish person, always feeding her own?
No, I'm
She may not be a
selfish.
good example.
She may be the
She's on
one.
one of the extremer ends.
So I just might try to save a little bit of time in terms of that discussion. I want to interject, and I guess it's back to the modernist position on like standard ethics. I didn't even know there was such a thing as postmodern ethics.
I didn't either. That was
I'm
interesting.
familiar with Derrida, but not very well. But the thing is, but just as a general thumb rule thing, we got the basic spectrum. One division would be egoism versus altruism, and there's some kind of some people argue that people by nature are selfish, or maybe that selfishness is what we're here to fight. But I actually think of it more in terms of understanding. The more you understand your own interests, the more you are likely to take into account other people's interests. And so you start with something egoistic, but eventually you progress through a series of different forms of ethical reasoning to where you actually build yourself up character-wise to where you can be more altruistic. Yeah, it's just like you growing as a person. It's how but you can't just say, altruism is the right way to go. You can't expect yourself to just jump to that space, the headspace. You have
I
to.
was gonna say, feel free to chime in on this. Does it seem, yes, maybe we should be working towards trying to help everyone else, but at what point does trying to help everyone else mean neglecting you?
The egoism.
That's
And get your own needs, sacrifice your own needs. You actually start to learn how meeting of your own needs actually includes other people.
Right.
And so like a good business decision is one where both parties are benefiting. That's good business practice. So business ethics isn't really any different from any other type of practice. So, and then the other dynamic between egoism and altruism is intentionality versus consequence. So like some people think, well, as long as they have good intentions, then that's what makes a good behavior, right? Whereas other people think it doesn't matter what your intentions are, because you could be a bumbling idiot and hurt people, you know, and you're still doing something wrong, you know. So anyway, so that's the dynamics. We can get back into that, but I wanted to go to the deconstruction business, because that's a technical term in that world of philosophy. So that's has to do, it actually traces all the way back to Plato, in the way that the reason why we do philosophy in the first place is to reevaluate all the things that you were taught as a little kid. It's like you're growing up in a certain culture, you're growing up in society, you start acquiring their beliefs and their behaviors, their mannerisms, all these things. And philosophy allows you to systematically go through and reevaluate all those things that you were taught and decide for yourself if you want to agree with that or not, or how you want to change it or whatever. And familiar with Heidegger, you know, it's Heidegger's position on authenticity. The reason we do deconstruction is so that you become more like yourself, you're a more authentic person. And so that's where it has that existential aspect. So it's like, how do you become more like yourself is by reevaluating the tradition you've inherited. You don't just blindly accept everything, but neither do you blindly reject it.
You make decisions.
You
Make
go back
personal
through
decisions on
systematically through the tradition, and you figure out which parts of it you want to keep and which part live your life to do those things, to affect those changes. And Derrida twisted Heidegger's concept, and that's where I would like to hear more about Derrida, his interpretation of deconstruction, what deconstruction is actually for.
So, like Derrida is part of sort of like the fathers of postmodernity. So it would include like Foucault, like that's the name that you know. Like what they do is they like actually like question sort of like the structures and the institutions that make up society. What Derrida did was he then applied deconstructionism to like the critique of institutions and structures in society, to see like how they're used, whether intentionally or unintentionally, to exclude or do harm to this sort of this other, you know, this big O other. So it's more of like this idea. So it's this reevaluating, figuring out like what's good, what's bad, what do we keep, what needs to be fixed, can it be fixed, should we fix it? But it's just taking like a critical look at sort of the history of institutions. So that can be, I mean, those can be sort of like concrete things like schools, or it could be sort of more of like a topical thing like what was that view? Like on like teaching, like education, like you know the topic of teaching, or like Foucault's big one was like sexuality. Like how do we like think of like sexuality like as an institution? How does that then influence our interactions with others or certain structures in society? So it's similar. It's just applied to more than sort of just like the self.
So try here and apply it to more of a collective scale or something. It's like Heidegger kind of spread out over a society or something.
Sort of.
I don't know any of these names that you guys.
Yeah, that's the problem. Maybe you get people with different degrees of familiarity with the tradition, you know. But
It still resonates though. I mean.
Yeah, I can still follow what you're saying, but that's when you sum things up with a name, you're really lost.
they're just, I mean, certain people have had a huge impact on the tradition. I mean, all philosophy really is this big discussion for past like 2,500 years. We're just talking about stuff and trying to figure out, you know, what is reality?
The world is
You know,
flat. No, it's not.
Yeah, who are we? You know, how do we live while we're here? I mean, those are the big questions, you know.
I'd like to hear who I should be reading first.
Yeah. Where would you start? Mike, where would you start if you were gonna start to look at philosophy?
It's like asking where you should jump in the ocean if you want to go to the ocean. There's
There's good
recommend a
answers
million
to that.
places, but
Which ocean?
Yeah.
Where on said ocean?
Depends on your particular leanings or
Well, we're
like
gonna
you were
need
talking about
beginners.
your what you're acclimated to, I guess.
That question is good about understanding my intentions for the group and how I personally relate to philosophy. I see it as there's this, you got two legs. You can't just do one leg and expect to get anywhere because then you walk around in circles. So you need to use left, right. But one aspect is trying to learn about topics. You know, what are the current discussions, controversies, those kinds of things. And so that's, I call it disputations, but I defer to the scholastics and their methodology in terms of, first you learn about people, who is said, and then disputations is like more contemporary issues like philosophy of mind. What does it mean to have intelligence? What does it mean to be educated? All those kind of issues about like the nature of consciousness is a really big thing right now. What does it mean to be conscious, and how does that relate to a
Because of
physical world?
artificial intelligence and the role
Yeah,
they're
there's
expecting
that,
it
yeah.
to play.
Selling it.
Well, that question kind of began with Descartes when he said, you know, that we have mind and body as a separate substance, and then people started, because everybody believed that until he said it. And then to be a philosopher, you have to question everything that you're told, right? So
funny.
once somebody said it formally, then it's like everybody's like, well, how can that be true? You know, how can there be two separate substances and have those substances actually interact with each other, right? So everybody since then has been trying to basically collapse either mind to body or body to mind, right? And like the sciences were very influential. So philosophy in the 20th century became this thing where basically it's the war between the analytics and the continentals. So the analytics are basically following science. You know, philosophy is just trying to make sense of what science
Still
is
make
doing.
that split. Yeah.
And but they're the people that tried to reduce the metaphysics. They would try to reduce mental activity to like neurons firing and chemicals in the brain, and that's
Because of their analytic.
yeah. So
mind.
basically, mind is the whole anything.
Computer.
Anytime you're talking about mind, it's like a fiction. It's not real. It's just you're imagining these things. They're not, but so the continental tradition goes the other way. At least there's a tendency to, and that goes back to Hegel.
Yeah.
But the tendency there is to talk about the continentals are more systematic in their thought process, where analytics try to break everything down in pieces. It's like, okay, you study biology, you study physics, you study, you know, everybody's got their separate little departments. Whereas continental, it all fits into one big. Right?
Yeah. Well, to an untrained mind like mine, I've never studied this yet. I've been doing deconstruction. I had everything taken from me when I had to have my ankle replaced. I was in a mailroom working with a group of people that were just coming off the bottom, and we were actually helping them. We were doing great things, and all of a sudden I got taken out of that. Well, to rebuild to where I'm at today, I found things that weren't working and I took them out and put them in and the good stuff back in. I was doing deconstruction, I just didn't know it, you know. And I think maybe Mark and I could say we're probably doing some of these things.
Oh, that's
we
true,
just
yeah,
don't know yet.
Basically, I mean, that's the thing about philosophy is that you're really asking the questions of what it means to be human. And so everybody's already doing it naturally, but it's to your great advantage to study the people who have come before you who ask these, because they have wrestled with these questions before. So
And
you can
yet
learn a
you
lot.
still
from them.
haven't given us a book to read.
I can give you my recommendation, but every different philosopher is going to have their,
Sure.
Different recommendations.
yeah. So
Somewhere to start.
yeah, I mean, personally, the book that I would start with is a book, it's called Modern Philosophy by Josiah Royce. Extremely clear and basically covers everything up until the 19th century. But he's
It'd be fun if everybody that was well versed in this read
read a list.
author down.
Who's your favorite?
Yeah.
And if you vote for it, check on that one. And we're gonna go and get those one or two.
I think that'd be a good exercise.
I think that it's important also to have at least some grasp of those things. I mean, because you can deconstruct your life and you do that anyways, but it's a matter of when you have the tools, discuss it with other people, when you're able to, because language is very relative. So, but in philosophy, that's a tool for, fitting language into a certain way, formulating patterns that other people can instantly recognize those patterns without having to have long expansive discussions about what this word means, then you already, you know what this word means, and you know exactly what they mean when they say it
Yeah,
to a
well,
degree.
yeah, every specialized discipline has its shorthand descriptors.
Yeah, I call deconstruction purging. That's what I called it. I purged myself, It's like get everything out and start over. That's what I've been doing it for years, but I didn't know it really.
It could be a double-edged sword though too, because in discussions of philosophy, I think that's where the boundaries of language become the most evident, because all of a sudden you realize that you can talk all day about something, and it doesn't mean that you're going to be painting that same picture for someone else so that they understand it. And if the goal of philosophy is to come to a mutual understanding, which that's debatable, I think, in my opinion, that's the goal of philosophy, because that's what happens anyways. Like you said, as you come to a better understanding, you start to see how your needs, are other people's needs as well. And the same goes with, with ideas. Once you start to deconstruct yourself, you also begin to be able to connect with the world around you better.
Well, yeah, I mean, I study philosophy for my own betterment, but when it comes to discussing things with other people, I basically engaging in rhetoric.
That's how many people are sitting around this table right now. We don't get crowds too often here in the beginning.
To post your needs.
I would like that.
So should we hit some
I think it's time for a break. I need a cigarette.
take a break?
Although I didn't talk to you about your intentions.
The connection just dropped again too, I noticed. It came right back on after like